Hey guys and gals, welcome to the show. Just doing a little sound check there. Hope everybody's had a good week. So this is episode 35, and it is actually number 200 in my YouTube library now. I actually have 200 videos out, so the lives are, a good percentage of that, but just a fun fact, I guess. We've been doing this now for 35 weeks, so moving on right along. Hope everybody had a good week, good weekend this last weekend. Here in the shop, I've been working on the Regal, trying to get that thing going together, and worked on Dave's Chevelle, did some more stuff on wiring and stuff like that on that. So we're getting closer to getting that done and getting a video on that. Put Dynamat inside the doors and the fenders and stuff. Hey, thanks, Ryan. 200, I can't believe it. But yeah, that worked out real well. I see a lot of cars come in, they put the Dynamat on the inner door panel, and then of course the door panels don't want to fit and stuff like that. I actually put it on the inside of the door skin, like I believe it's supposed to be installed. It's not easy, trying to get your hand in between the little holes and recesses in the inner door panel, but you can really, when you knock on the fender, on the fender, and then go to the door, and then go to the quarter panel, you can definitely hear a solid or a denseness to the panel. So I think it's going to be real nice when the car's all finished. Should give the car a real good solid sound when the door shuts. And I did put them on the inside of the quarter panel where the quarter windows go, so that should help there too. But yeah, I've been moving along. Spent a little bit of time getting, and Ryan says door skin is where it should be. That's what I thought too. Thanks for backing me up on that. I don't know why people put it on the inner door panel, because then nothing fits. It's a mess there. And then you try to fix a window regulator or something like that, you get the tar stuff the gooey stuff all over you and stuff. Just not good. On the Regal drag car, of course, I had to assess where we were, order parts and stuff, so that took a whole day to get that stuff done. I see Chris is on. Hey, Chris. So moving, that took a lot of time, but we got parts are coming in, and been working on brake lines and steel braid, getting all the oiling system. It's got a 3-stage dry sump system in it. Well, actually 4, I guess. 3 suction stages and 1 pressure stage, and coolant lines and fuel lines and all that stuff. And just got the connector for the MSD grid, so I can start doing wiring in the next couple of days. So we'll probably do something with the braided stuff. Kind of thought, oh crap, I didn't have anything for tech tonight, so I did put together something for the brake lines, as I was doing brake lines. So hopefully that might be interesting to you guys. But that's pretty much what we've been going on here. Just getting ready. We got the Smurf will be coming back soon. We gotta get ready. We're gonna have a big race in Valdosta, Georgia, on the 29th and 30th. So probably 28th will be testing. 29th and 30th will be the actual event. Our race team is actually hosting or promoting that event. So if anybody's in the southern Georgia area or northern Florida area, stop on by, say hi. Have some pretty good grudge racing going on there. I think we've got 3 classes already locked in, or 2 classes locked in, and another class close to being locked in with all the cars that are entered, and then of course there'll be heads up grudge racing also, so be a good time. Been doing some diagnostic work on some more EFI stuff, and I didn't know if anybody had noticed. I did drop a sniper video, I guess yesterday morning. That's going to be the start of a whole series. I'm going to do sniper. I'll do a series on the Terminator X. I'll do another one on the HP and Dominator systems. A lot of it will be redundant, but hopefully it'll be useful. I started with the sniper because that's the one I do a lot of remote tuning with. The higher systems, especially like Dominator, usually once the guy gets that in his car, he's either going to tuner that's going to the track or street with him, or learning to do it himself. So, or I'm doing remote on it also. So, but the sniper systems, I mean, you get a handheld, and you have to buy an extra cable if you want to communicate with the laptop. So I thought it was good to be able to use the first video on how to transfer data with the SD card. See, Ryan says, brake line sounds fun. Can we do AN hose and fittings later? Yeah, that's the kind of what we're going to do. I think we're going to do brake lines tonight, and then we'll do the AN fittings tomorrow night. Wait a couple more minutes here, and I'll start that little thing. I kind of changed it up a little bit, too. Instead of doing a slideshow like I've been doing, actually set up a bunch of pictures and make my own slide. I can time them as I want, so we can have more discussion on what we're looking at on the screen. So hopefully that'll be good. Let me know. Chris says my keyboard is a problem, can't type. Speaking of that, Chris, with problems, how is the Nova going? You guys have it running yet? And where are you at with that? Anybody else that's on Ryan? Obviously, the square body is still in tight wraps, but he shared some pictures with me of the new cowl cover and the quick button or quick latches on the hood. That thing's coming out beautiful. I think it's going to be super incredible when it's done. Another little weird tidbit, or not weird, I guess cool tidbit. Ken Mahoy from Spider Garage contacted me, was asking me some questions about the Harry's Glass decon kit. He thought I had the phase 4, so he was going to ask me some questions about wheel openings and stuff like that. See, Mike's on. Hey, Mike, how you doing? For any of you guys who've seen the Vet Hawk videos, Chris is stressed out. That's not good, man. On the decons, there was like 3 or 4 phases about the body evolving as they ran in the IMSA Camel GT series. So I kind of favored the second phase, which was more closer to like a Mirage, which was a factory copy of that. As they got up in the phase numbers 3, 4, 5, and I think they ended with 6, everything got bigger and bigger. They went with a high wing and all that stuff. I myself kind of like the spoiler better than the high wing, so that's what I went with. And so anyway, Ken had contacted me, and we talked tonight. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to give him a lot of information. I did tell him the wheel offsets that I'm gonna run, and he was pretty close to the same thing. He's gonna run 18 by 20, 18 by 12, and I'm gonna run 18 by 11s. So he had a little bit wider stance, but going to the phase 4 body, he'll be able to use that, because I think that body's at least an inch wider. So that was pretty cool. I like watching him and his son's videos. They do a good job. His son's really turned out to be quite the fabricator and stuff. So all that good stuff. So good luck, Ken and Nathaniel, on your build, and hopefully you'll be able to get all your stuff quick. And I'm sure you're going to like the quality of the Harry's glass. I was super stoked about the stuff that I got, so I'm sure you'll be in good shape there too. So I guess we'll go ahead and look at this stainless steel brake line deal. So let me put that on. So there's how I buy my stainless steel brake tubing. Now, for you guys at home doing your own cars, obviously everybody's not going to use a stainless steel. You can get soft bend line from your local parts store. I myself prefer the stainless. My mindset is you're going to spend the time and the effort to replace all the steel brake lines in the car. You're going to want to put something that's not going to corrode and will last the life of the car. Even all the armor coated and everything else that companies like AGS make, they all will rust eventually. On the NASCAR, I was looking at the lines and that thing. I'm gonna have to redo all those. They're destroyed, and I'm sure that was some kind of coated brake line originally. So stainless, in my eyes, is the only way to go. It's the only thing I typically will. It's the only thing I will put in a car. So that's how I buy them in 25 and 50 foot rolls. And I use this tubing straightener. I got that from Eastwood, and I did put in the comments or in the description of this live show, I put all the links to all these parts. But this is a pretty nice tool. Eastwood's got some newer style ones now that you can put like in the palm of your hand, and it's got 4 little wheels, but that is only made for one specific size, where this tool will go all the way up to 3/8 tube, so I can use it for training lines, for fuel lines and stuff like that. So it's pretty handy, and you just adjust the knob and keep running the tubing back and forth, and you can get a 10-foot piece pretty straight. It may still have a little bit of a bow in it, but for the most part it's pretty straight. And when you put it in the car and put saddle clamps or Adele clamps on it, it'll be straight as an arrow. So that's how I do it, and of course that's how the tubing rolls in there. Normally I have it in a vise and then doing it from there, but the workbench is full tonight, so I decided just to do it on the ground. Kind of give you an idea what I do with that. So anyway, so that's it. A roll of tubing, I measure out just like you do with everything else, either with a soft tape or a vacuum line, and you can figure out how much tubing you need and then cut it off the roll and then do it. And to straighten it out off the roll, I just stand on one end and roll it out against the floor, and that does a fairly good job. I see Ryan says he's got the same roller. It does work good. It does work good. So this is my old school. Well, I shouldn't say old school. Old school ones were the old 2 bars with the clamp, and to get a double flare. And that's one thing on brake lines, you always want to do a double flare. This tool works really well on steel. Any of the parts store tubing, this thing will make magnificent double bend or double flare and bubble flare. And it's quick and easy. You can knock out a brake line kit pretty quick with that. But stainless, not so much. The first couple stainless jobs I did with this, I ended up taking the rubber cushion off the handle and putting a pipe on it, and I had to sand the dies enough to get enough clamping force to keep the tubing from sliding out. So that's kind of how that piece there sets up. You put it in the vise, and then you got your handle, and you do as you can see here, you've got OP operation 1, operation 2, and that's how you set for your different tools and stuff to make your dual flares. And then obviously OP0 is the depth tool. You put that on there, tighten against the dies, push your line in, clamp it down. So I mean, it's a good tool, and they do make a 37 degree kit, so you can do hard lines for AN. But like I said, if you're doing aluminum and steel, it's quick and easy. One of the downfalls of this tool was, and I found all the time, is when I was working in a service shop, on a fleet shop, we'd have to replace brake lines or fuel lines and stuff in RVs and in trucks and stuff like that. They've gotten rusty from salt or ocean corrosion or whatever, and you invariably have one flare that you needed to redo, and the line's already in the car, and now obviously you can't take the vise over to the car to make this. So that was always one issue with this tool. It wasn't as convenient. What I use now is this Master Cool tool. This is a hydraulic. I've actually got AC fitting crimper in this same brand. This thing works fantastic. One of the nice things about it is you can go right up to the car and do it right on the car. You can do it anywhere you need to do it. I've bought the Master Kit, so you can see that this will do push connect. It'll do late model GM quick connect, trans lines, bubble flare, metric, and of course all your double flare American. So it's a real nice kit. It does come with a T-handle on the wrench side that clamps the jaws. I use an open-end wrench. That's what the half-inch wrench is there for. Because with the stainless, you got to really crank down to get the stainless to hold solid in the jaw. So that when you're pushing the dies on it, it doesn't push the tubing out. But this tool works really, really good. And I had to learn a couple little tricks to make really good fittings out of it on the stainless. But it's got the pressure to crimp it. That's not a problem with this tool. It will smash a pipe, no problem, a piece of tubing, no problem. That's with a piece of stainless in it set up, and it's got over here on this side, it's got this little flip lever. That's your depth guide. I find with steel tubing, the guide is spot on. For stainless, I find I have to actually stick it out of the dies. Not much, maybe a 16th, just a hair out. But that seems to work better because of how much crush you can get on the first flare. So there's two dies on a double flare on either this tool or on the Eastwood tool. One's got a stud coming out, and then it's got a formed roll thing. And what it actually does is pushes the tubing into a round, like a donut. So when you pull it out, it's shaped like a donut stuck on the end of the tubing. Then you put a pointed tool in there, which we go back one. You can see right here. There's both of the dies there. So this is the first operation, and you can see that dimple goes inside the tubing, and then this half moon section here forms into a donut-looking shape. And then you release it. You put this cone in there, and then the cone forms the double flare. It takes that donut, crushes it, and forces it into a double flare. That works out real well. So typically what you would normally do when you're going to do a double flare is you take your tubing cutter and you cut the tube, and that's what it ends up with. It's kind of got a radius in it as from the tubing cutter rolling around the tubing and forcing the idea of the tube to get smaller as it's forcing the material around. Same on steel or aluminum. Anytime you're doing any of these tubing, cutting these tubing with a tubing cutter, even on an exhaust pipe, it does the same thing. That is really hard to get a good double flare out of stainless. So through trial and error, I have come up with this method. So I use a cutoff wheel of death, and I cut the tube off. It looks nasty and rough and everything else, but that's okay. It just forms the tube a little bit better in my eyes. Then I take a center inside, lost my train of thought, inside ream, and I ream the inside material to the ID of the stainless line, and then I take a file and I work the outside until it's all smooth. So now you've got the tubing end is basically the wall thickness of the stainless tubing, and that seems to be produce the best flare. They don't always come out perfect, but they come out usable. So that's how I start out with that. And once I get a flare done, that's kind of what it looks like. Now you'll notice on the tubing, because I've had to clean the dies a little bit to get a really good clamp on the stainless. It marks the stainless a little bit, but I usually take a file and just clean that up a little bit. This one actually came out really well. That was probably a usable flare. But I've had ones that don't come out so perfect, which are still usable, but they have indentations or markings on them, and if you try to use it, you'll get a leak. And if any, I'm sure Ryan and Mike have run into this before. When the flare isn't exactly right, it can make a mess. Ryan, you're right. I just was thinking about that while I was talking, and maybe the heat from the cutoff wheel does soften the stainless a little bit. But it definitely is the best way I have found to do it. And how I ran into it by accident, because the way the die deforms the OD, if the flare was bad, I'd have to cut it off. Well, I'd have to cut it off past the where the die did it. And one time I just said, well, screw it, let me just do it, and went through, and it worked out really well. And that's the way I've been doing it now for a while. This is my last operation, because even with getting the flares to be double flare, being that stainless is pretty hard, sometimes you're going to get imperfections in the 45-degree surface where it's going to make contact. And of course, brake fluid, it can be 1500 psi. If you're really standing on the brakes, you can even get it higher than that. And first of all, brake fluid leaks are a huge problem when you're working on a finished car. It's all painted and everything else. So I really, forced to try not to have any issues. I really work hard at that, making sure all the lines are good and tight and all that. But before I bought this tool, invariably I'd have a leak somewhere in the system. And I would go through and take the lines apart and look at the flare just to make sure the flare was good, and they looked okay. But if you go under the magnifying glass, like how I filmed those pieces of tubing, you can see imperfections. So this tool has a diamond stone, and you put your tubing in your die, and then a spritz of WD-40, and then you take the handle, push it in, and spin, and that hones the flare. And you'll see in this kit, it also comes with a 37 degree, so you can do AN fittings and stuff like that. Really nice tool. Cool Tools makes really cool stuff. They make kits to help push steel braid hose into fittings. They make a hose pusher for push lock hoses, and they make external or internal thread cleaner for AN fittings. Really good if you're working with a lot of AN fittings. They have some really nice tools that make it easy to keep all the make everything work properly and stuff like that. So after that's how you put the tubing in, and then you push the handle in and hone the or lap, actually is the proper word, the 45-degree flare. And there it is when it's all lapped in. Now the other picture was shiny because I got lucky on that one. That one came out real well. But sometimes you'll get some imperfections in the stainless at that 45 degrees. So now that it's lapped, it's got a good finish. And even though the other one was shiny and looked good, it wasn't as wide as this one. This one has a much wider contact area now that it's been lapped in. So that's the current way. For the last, I don't know, 4 years I've been doing these systems. So much that I don't even think about it anymore. There's another angle that I didn't even think about doing this as a tech tip. So because it just a lot of the issues that I had are all gone now ever since I went to this procedure. So that's pretty much what I do with that stuff. You all know when you start getting in tools and stuff, the amount of money you can have wrapped up in tools is pretty wild. That Mastercare or Mastercool hydraulic flaring tool. Now they do make just a flaring tool that isn't too expensive. I think it's maybe in a 275 range. The one I have is over 500, but I can make all kinds of different lines when I need to do that. And I'm kind of a tool junkie anyway. So Bill says I wish I had a tool like that when I did all the brake lines in the 32. I haven't had a leak yet. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, using good double flares on steel tubing, you really don't see too much a leak issues as long as you look and make sure you've made a proper flare. The stainless line is where it gets a lot more tricky, but patience and taking your time, you can get it done where there's a leak-free system, no doubt. I just always had that issue that I've got a whole lot of brake line to do, and I'm trying to do it in a timely manner. When I'm working on a buddy or customer's car, they're gonna it's gonna be a deal where I gotta charge them something for it, so I don't want to take up too much time and then have to charge them an absorbent amount when it was really could have been done quicker. So I try to hustle the brake lines around pretty good, and so the system I did works out real well for me. Yeah, you definitely need the right tool to do the right job. Just like Bill, I know you've helped me out with electrical work in the building and stuff, and you got all kinds of really cool electrician tools for doing all the work that you do. So you're right. I mean, the right tool makes the job super, super easy. So anyway, so that's our little tech segment for tonight. Hope that shed some light on some of the things it takes to get the job right and stuff like that. It's that's one of the tedious jobs that that you got to get it right, because the leaks are the worst, and you don't want to have any issues with brake systems. That's for sure. That's one of the most important tools on the car is to stop it. You need good brakes and reliable brakes and stuff like that. We've talked over on the brakes in earlier episodes with the residual valves, depending on where your master cylinder is, mounted, and pedal ratios and all that stuff. So all those things are really important for having a vehicle with a proper brake system. Thanks, Ryan. I'm glad you guys are liking the tech segments. Just trying to help everybody out. Maybe somebody might have a problem with something that they've been fighting, or had an issue with a project and they got it fixed, or maybe never got it fixed, and just or just want to learn for the next time. So that's the whole thing with that. So like I was saying with the residual valves, whenever your master cylinder is below the level of the calipers or drums, you have to put residual valves to hold the fluid to the caliper and or drum, because fluid runs downhill. So if your master is the lowest, the lines will empty, or they won't empty out, but they'll create a gap. And then when you apply the brakes, you'll see the first or second pumps are pretty bad until you actually get the fluid moved up there. So so on the 4-disc, what I usually do is you can do a 2 psi per caliper. So not per caliper, I'm sorry, per master cylinder side. So a 4-wheel disc brake, you would use a 2 pound to the front and a 2 pound to the back. And then for drum, you typically use a 10 pound, because a drum has springs. You guys have all changed brake pads sometime in your life. You got all those springs pulling the brake shoes back in, so that pushes all the fluid out of the wheel cylinder. So you put a 10 pound to hold a little bit more pressure against those springs to keep it from collapsing the brakes too far. A lot of your drum master cylinders will have a residual valve built in. I don't know if anybody's tried to use a converted drum brake car to disc brake. So you got like Mustang's a good example. So you got front disc, rear drum. You got the master cylinder, it's got the big reservoir for the front, and you got a little tiny reservoir for the rear. And you throw rear disc brakes on it, and you try to use all the components that are there for that. And if the residual valve is in good shape, you'll find that the rear discs are they're not locked up, but they definitely have drag because of the factory residual valve in the master cylinder. And again, that's because drum brakes have springs that collapse the wheel cylinder. So you have to have something holding a little pressure on there to keep the brake system full. So, but all the drag cars with the master cylinders mounted under the floor, my 50 Chevy that had the master cylinder under the car, Bill, your 32 with the master under, that's what you'd want to do. You want a 2 pound residual on each side of the master. And what that'll do is holds the fluid up, keeps the, it's not enough pressure to apply the caliper, but it'll just keep it from collapsing all the way back. And when you hit the brakes, it'll be the same brake pressure every time you hit the brake pedal. And you can tell right away when you need one. If you got a low mount master and it takes 2 pumps to make the brake pedal feel firm, you need residual valves on there. So that's a big thing on that. And of course the pedal ratios are always important. Drum brake, you should always have a 6-to-1 pedal ratio. A boosted brake system, you can use a 5 or a 4.5-to-1. That's because you have the booster assisting the application of the master cylinder. So that way it takes some of the effort off the brake pedal. But that's those are the big things. One of the things we talked about early on in the series was master cylinder size, and I had a conversation with Bill last week, and my go-to on that is I measure all my pistons, because like your Willwood Dynalites, they have 2 or 3 different size pistons depending on where they're going to be located, front or rear. But you measure the OD of the pistons and the size of the rotor, and you call up Willwood and talk to the tech guy and say, listen, I need help with the master cylinder sizing. Here's what I've got. And you give him all the specs of your calipers and the rotors, and they've got a formula probably in a computer program, because he come up with it pretty quick. But I found that their sizing has been spot on all the time. So that's worked out real well for me. I know on my 50, I had manual brakes under the floor with Corvette calipers, and that thing had awesome braking. It was no super high effort. It felt like a normal brake system. For lockup, you'd have to push down, use a little bit more leg muscle because you don't have a power assist. But you get, my feeling is on a manual brake, you get really good brake feedback. Obviously the NASCAR's got has manual brakes. It does not have power booster on it. And the Vethawk, when I build it, it will have power steering, but it will not have any kind of Hydro Boost or brake booster, because I want that feeling of the braking. You want to be able to feel in your foot when you're wheeling the car around the track. You want to know, modulation of the pressure and stuff like that. Yeah, Ryan, you're right. Willwood is great about the tech. There's a lot of brake companies out there, and I get reps. In fact, Bear now is sold through Holley, so I could probably get a pretty good discount on them. But just Willwood has such a good tech system, and they have plenty of different applications and everything else. It's just, I use them no matter what. It's just a good go-to. Ryan says, you do all manuals too. I think it's it's really good. Now a street cruising car, I can see the Hydro Boost is maybe nice, but I wouldn't do that on a car that you're going to try to do any kind of track or performance driving, just because I just don't like the feel of the power assist. But the Hydro Boost is a nice addition, especially when you're building a car that may not have real high vacuum signal, or a boosted application, supercharged, turbocharged, because when they're in boost, you don't have any vacuum in your brake system. So if you have a small leak in your power brake booster, and it's requiring a constant vacuum to keep that vacuum ready for your application of brake, the Hydro Boost is a much better application for that, because now it's hydraulically, as long as the engine's turning, you've got brake pressure or brake assist. So it's a good, it has its place. I definitely, I do build cars. Almost all the street cars I build have a Hydro Boost in them from the customers. We discussed what they want, and that's usually what when I put that in. Otherwise, like you say, Ryan, I do manual too. And of course, the NASCAR's got a little different setup in it. It's got more of a road race type braking, so you have dual master cylinders instead of a single master cylinder. So what they do with that is there's a balance bar, and you got your brake pedal, and instead of having a direct connected push rod going right to the single master cylinder at the 6-to-1 ratio, this will have a tie bar that's threaded, and it'll have and that tie bar will be going to two master cylinders side by side, one on each side of the brake pedal at the same distance. And then what you do is on the dash or on the tunnel or somewhere in the car, there's a knob or a crank or some type of instrument that you can, on the fly, move the brake effort to one or the other master cylinder. So if you're, obviously if you get driving down the road, you do some power stops, and you get to where the brakes lock up all together, so you've got the brakes balanced. But you may be on a track where it's a little bit greasy or it's raining, and you want a little bit more trail braking. You want the back to come on first to keep the car straight, and then apply the front. So you can crank the brakes to that way, and vice versa. If you want more front and you don't want the rears because you're trail braking through a turn, and you don't want the car stepping out because the rears are on you're hard on the brakes, then you can adjust it so there's less brake to the rear or the front, whichever way you want to adjust it. So that's how they do them in a lot of the race cars. It's a little different. Most people probably have never seen a setup like that, being it's a high-end race kind of package. But it works good. And of course, anytime you have a brake system, you definitely want a dual reservoir. So either a single master cylinder with dual reservoir or a twin brake system with a balance bar. You never want a single reservoir master cylinder like all the cars from the 60s on back came with. That is a huge no-no. I can attest. In high school, I had a '64 Malibu SS, and it was even then, it was probably 81 or 80. The car was already almost 20 years old. Well, on leaving school, going to work at a welding shop I was working at in Knoxville, Tennessee, I jumped on the brakes because I took a different route to work, and unfamiliar roads, and didn't realize there was so much stop and go on a 4-lane highway. So somebody got on the brakes to make a left-hand turn, but they didn't pull into the center turning lane. They just did in the driving lane, and everybody threw on the brakes. I was fourth in line. I threw on the brakes, and a brake hose ruptured, or metal line ruptured. I never found out what happened. The car was wrecked beyond my repair. But yeah, that made a 4-car pilot because it still had the factory single reservoir master cylinder. So when the brake fluid loss happened, no matter where it was, no more brakes. And so, downshift the power glide, threw on the e-brake, but the problem with e-brakes is that just locks the rear tires up because the car's already, lurching forward, so the back end is lifted and it's lighter than normal. So, lesson learned. That was not good. So, once I started any car from that point on, I always made sure it had a dual reservoir master cylinder on it. Even if it was just a beater that I was driving around, I would convert it. Never wanted that issue ever again. It was actually probably one of my most favorite cars I ever had, and lost it tragically. So luckily nobody got hurt, but it was, nevertheless the car was lost, and that was the end of the story for that hot rod. But those are the things you guys want to look at. You always got, think about your brake system, and don't have crazy problems and wreck the car because of poor brakes or not engineered well brakes or anything like that. So as Ryan and I both have said, you ever have questions, Willwood is a great source for tech assistance. And it helps if you have some parts on your car, but they will answer tech questions even when you don't have their components on the car. They're really good people. Bill says, can you talk about the brake pressure while drag racing when staging the car? Yes. So you'll notice in like Pro Stock, so it's typically when you're staging the car at the track, the only time you're really going to use brake pressure to assist is going to be in a clutch car. So an automatic car, well, let me rephrase that. A clutch car or a car without trans brake. So anytime you do that, you gotta set your pedal, your pressure, turn your pre-stage on, turn the stage on. So what Pro Stock does, because they're in a very high-end racing, the win and loss margin of victories are usually 3 and 4 digits out. So very close racing. So every little advantage you can take, you need. So what they do is they have a brake pressure gauge on the front wheel, and when they pull in the pre-stage, they pump the brake and hit a line lock, and they set the brake pressure at a known number. So let's just say, for instance, from testing, you test that the car, you can creep the car with the clutch at 600 psi. So what they do is they get the brake pressure to 600 psi, engage the line lock. Now their foot can come off the brake pedal, and they know from testing that the car can be moved forward. Now, obviously, you could probably move the car forward at any brake pressure, but what you don't want to do is ride the clutch to push the car into the beams and get your clutch overheated, because now your launch is not going to be as good. Your 60 foot is going to be down. So that's kind of how they do it, because they're three pedaling it and they got two legs. So, they'll be clutch in, easing, just kind of moving the clutch in and out to get the first stage beam on. Then they stop, engage the brake, get the right pressure, hit the line lock. Then they go to the gas, and they'll ease the gas and ease the clutch to push the car into the stage section, the second bulb, and then they'll go straight to the wood on the gas and let go of the clutch when they're ready to leave. That's how a Pro Stock car is done. Now, I used to drive a Pro Mod. We make it a little easier on us. Most of the cars I've driven, well, pretty much all the clutch cars I've driven, had a handbrake in it. So basically the same thing. I would put the pre-stage on, apply the handbrake, but now I wouldn't worry about pressure because I've got the handbrake in my hand. I can modulate the brake pressure to roll the car into the beam without getting the clutch hot. So it was a little different. In Pro Mod, there's usually a little bit more margin of victory, so you aren't looking for all that because you got big blower motor or a nitrous motor or whatever, turbo, so you've got plenty of power, and it just makes it easier when you got the handbrake. Now, when you're doing a foot brake with an automatic, again, it's kind of the same thing. You can push the brake in, and the car's in gear. Depending on how loose the converter is, you don't have to give it a whole lot of gas to bump it into the beams. And then, once you get where you want, then you can launch. Now, on a trans brake application, which I suggest everybody use if you're drag racing an automatic transmission, it makes it so much easier. And at that point, with a trans brake, the brake pressure isn't much of a need at that point. So what you want to do there with the trans brake, again, you roll into the beam, get the pre-stage lit, then your foot brake on the modulating foot pressure on the brake pedal and the gas till you get the second bulb to come on, and you mash your trans brake button, then let go of the brake. Now, some people don't do it in that order, and if you have like a power glide and your band is loose, if you go in and hit the trans brake and let go of the brake pedal at the same time, sometimes the car will rock. So if you're bracket racing, that could change your reaction time, because you could roll in deep, or you could roll in so shallow that the light goes back out, the stage light goes back out, and if the tree's coming down, you'll go red. So that's, you got to really watch that. I prefer to hold the brake pressure pretty hard till the trans brake is engaged. Once the trans brake is engaged, then I let go of the pedal. You got to remember that when you're staging the car, you have about 7 seconds from the time the last car goes into the stage beam before the tree is activated. So, you got to get it in a repetition, and then it all comes natural. So I know for you, Bill, you don't, with the drive and drag, you don't get a lot of seat time during the year because we're making mods to the car and what have you. So one thing that's good for any racer is practice. And you can practice. I practice the clutch, working the clutch in the Pro Mod, and you can practice your car with the trans brake. Sit in the garage. Motor doesn't have to be running or anything, but you can, visualize bumping in, mash the trans brake, let go of the brake pedal, gas to the floor, let go of the button. And if you get really fancy, you can get a little practice tree and use the practice tree button as your trans brake button, so you can see that you'll have, you can get your timing down, so you can get that all that uh, can't think of the word now, but it's muscle muscle recall. You get that muscle recall so that you don't have to think about what you're doing. You just pull in. You already your brain, your muscles already know what's going on. Hit the brake, bump in, hit the trans brake, let go of the brake, gas to the floor, let go of the button, leave the line. So it's just a matter of repetition. So I see John came in. Hey, John, great to have you in tonight. So that's what I would do for you, Bill. I mean, you don't have to do it now, but I would definitely say 2 months before the next drag event. But, go out in the garage every Saturday and sit in the car for 20 minutes. When I drove the Pro Mod, I actually had a full-size practice tree, and I had connectors wired to the brake pedal, the clutch switch, because on a clutch car, the two-step switch, or you're not a trans brake, but the thing that activates the two-step is the actual clutch pedal. There's actually a roller switch on there. So I had an extra weather pack connector in the car. I could plug that into my practice tree, and I could sit in the car, and I actually sat in the car with my fire suit on, my helmet on. I had the doors open and the fan blowing, but I simulated launching the car and doing all that over and over again, probably 30 minutes once a week at least. And that works real good for getting the rhythm. I did it. I spent a lot of time in the Pro Mod because we were always chasing reaction time. No matter how good I could be on the practice tree, when we got in the car, I was always like 050 to 070 lights. I could never get down into the teens and 20s where you really want to be, because now if you race somebody that is 1/10 of a second on the reaction time, and you're 15 thousandths on the reaction time, you've already got almost a full tenth on ET to beat the guy. But we ended up coming to the conclusion, and after I went to Roy Hill School, that there was problems with the way the car was working that caused that delay in reaction time. I was on the pedal. My reaction, foot reaction was great, which I saw on the practice tree. I just couldn't make it happen on the starting line, and it ended up being issues with the car. But big time bracket racer guys, they'll sit in their cars for half hour, once a week, twice a week, all the time, practicing that launch, because whenever you can get good, clean launches and all off of muscle memory, you're going to be hard to beat. That is one of the things about drag racing, is that reaction time. Back in the day, we had customers, we were running foot brake class, and they're like, oh, I need you to put a trans brake in my car. I need you to do this. I need you to do that, because I can't cut a good light. The reality of it is you have to get a routine so that you can cut a light. So when you're foot braking, the practice there is you get comfortable enough that you cut this close to the same light all the time. Don't worry about if it's fast or slow. If you're cutting 080s, fine. I want to see 10 tickets that are from 075 to 085. If you can do that, now we can adjust the car to get where you need to be so you can cut teens. But you want that consistency. You got to be able to, your eye-hand or eye-foot coordination has to be there, that you're grouped into a small group of time slot. And then you can adjust the car. So in the car, you can play with front tire pressure. You can change tire size, because you're rolling through beams that are 6 inches apart on the starting line. So anytime you change tire size, you can change your reaction spot. Now, in trans brake racing, especially when you're in a pro, super pro class, they run a delay box. In the delay box, you can put in the time needed to, from the perfect triple O light to where your average light is, you can put the time in there so that you can get as close to that triple O as you want. But once again, if you can't leave at a consistent time every time, the delay box isn't helping you out, because you're going to go red and you're going to go late and you're going to be all over the place. So that eye foot is something that everybody has to work on if they really want to be proficient at drag racing. And with a trans brake car, you got all those things going on. You really need to get that muscle memory so that you do it without even thinking about what you're doing. You just roll in. It's just like, making a glass of iced tea. You already know what you got to do. You don't have to think about, I need to get this. You already got the ingredients. You know what ingredients you need. You put it in. You don't have to measure anything. You already know how to measure it. It just happens. That's what you want. You want to stage the car and leave the starting line and make it just happen, that you didn't have to think about what you did. And when you can accomplish that, you become a racer that nobody wants to race against, because they know you got your act together and you're going to be hard to beat. So that's pretty cool. We went from stainless steel brake lines to staging a car. That was pretty cool. Appreciate that. John says, I've been wanting to put a trans brake in my car. Yeah, trans brake just makes it so much easier. The whole thing is, when you're drag racing and you have a reaction time, you want to take all the variables out of it that you can. So obviously, staging the car into the beams is very important, whether you shallow stage or deep stage or whatever. When you're foot braking, your RPM is very critical. How much pressure you're applying to the brakes, because you don't have a gauge. Most people don't have a brake pressure gauge in their car. All those things will factor into how your reaction time goes. So you put a trans brake in the car and some type of two-step. Well, now you stage the car, hit the trans brake, put the gas pedal to the floor, and your foot's already off the brake. So all you got to do now is let go of the button and the car takes off. So it just makes it that much more consistent of what you're doing, and just makes it a lot better. Now, the other thing is, having a two-step in the car, now you can have a set RPM so that you're always leaving at that same RPM. And if you're doing any kind of heads-up racing, you have a tuning tool, because if the car it needs a perfect track to launch at 5,500, you might have to drop it down to 4,500 when the track is getting greasy, so you don't blow the tires off. So you have a little bit more things to control. So that's kind of what we do. When I'm helping people out with their cars. We for the foot breakers, depending on the sanctioning body you run with, I know IHRA, you can foot brake with a two-step. So we've wired them in so you can do that. John says, plus your full stall on the converter. Correct. You can go right up against the converter, or some cars that have real big tires on them and not a lot of horsepower, they'll be 1,000 under the flash of the converter, so that the engine can take a run and grab the converter and create momentum to get the car to leave. But yeah, when you're uptight, you take your car and you got a foot brake. So let's just do it for instance. So you got a car with a 3,500 stall in it. It's a street strip car. You're foot braking it. Well, you can't get the 3,500 on the brakes and launch the car. There's no way. The converter will start engaging, and you can't apply enough brake pressure to hold that car. Ask anybody that drives a Grand National or or a Cyclone, Typhoon, any other kind of turbocharged automatic street car. So that's where the trans brake is nice, because now you're locking the transmission, so you can run up tight against the converter. You can make a run at the converter. You can do anything you want to do. So that makes it a lot better. But for like foot braking, if you're in a class and they allow two-step, that's a good help, because now you can get that gas pedal to the floor and the two-step will control so that you launch with the same launch RPM every time. And the brake pressure, as long as you're holding the car, you should be pretty good. But you can always put a brake pressure gauge in, and then you can even take another equation out of the picture. I know years ago when we ran NHRA, sportsman class, they called it back then, you couldn't have any two-step or anything like that. So what we did with our cars is we used a AC stepper relay or solenoid. So on Rochester's and even on Holly's, they make a AC solenoid stepper motor that when the clutch is engaged, the stepper motor engages and opens the throttle to bring the RPM up to help with the load of the compressor. So, and it has a pretty decent amount of travel in that thing. So when we were trying to make our cars more consistent and be able to get the same launch every time, that's what we do. We put one of those on the engine, and we actually even had one on a tune port system. I made a bracket and put it on there. But what we would do is have a toggle switch in the car. So when the toggle switch was in position 1, the brakes work normal. The solenoid, none of that stuff works. Put it in 2, which we call race mode. When you applied the brake pedal, that sent the signal to the solenoid, and then you'd tap the throttle, and that would jump the throttle up and hold it at whatever set RPM. That's usually got a adjustable stop screw on it. So we would set it to like 1800 RPMs with like a 3000 stall, and now you can just slightly let go of the brake, not turning the brake lights off because you don't want to lose the solenoid, but you could creep the car into the beam, so you could go in super shallow, and then all you had to do is swap feet when the light came green, and it worked very, very well. One year in Moroso, Palm Beach International, they had a sportsman. Let me step back. They had an annual race, Citrus Nationals, and it was a big event the weekend of Thanksgiving. And back at the time when I ran it, they actually was a Division II NHRA points race. So you had top alcohol funny cars, top alcohol dragsters, some comp eliminator guys, and the super stockers and the stockers, and then they would have a bracket race for all the local guys. And the one year I ran the Citrus, my buddy Doug and myself got down to 3 cars. So he's driving a 95 or 96 Corvette C4 with a ZZ3 crate motor. It was the 383 crate motor, tune port with a Excel DFI, but we had our throttle stop solenoid in there. I had my 72 Nova, had a 355 with a EFI setup on it, and we got down to 3 cars, and the other car that we had to race was a full-out race car, gutted, had big block, all this crazy stuff. And here's us 2 street cars on street tires racing for the championship at the Citrus Nationals, and Doug actually won it. So it worked out real well. It was when you're bracket racing, that's the whole thing you got to do, and that's why I was never a good bracket racer, because I can't leave my car alone. Every week I'm making the car faster. Well, that kind of makes it hard for dial-ins and stuff, because now you don't have any records with this combination. So that wasn't my big forte. I'm more of a heads-up or a class guy, but Doug was a big component in bracket racing, and he was on the team, the top 10 every year with his vet. And just to kind of help think about how good that setup worked at the the Southeast Division II bracket finals in Gainesville that same year, they had a track managers race, and we put our track manager, who never drove that car, and he went 3 rounds with it because he used all the stuff we told him to do, and we helped him with dial-ins. But I mean, here's a guy never was in the car before, not a bracket racer, he's a track manager, and he went 3 rounds with the car. So that's the mindset you have to be for that kind of thing. Is, you know, it's got to have repeatability and stuff like that. Yeah, Doug definitely kills it in bracket racing. That's right. Mike worked for Doug for many years, so his office is full of plaques and trophies and Ironmans and all kinds of stuff he's won over the years. Hopefully we can get a track back in this area again so he can get back out on the track. He's kind of upset, you know, kind of put the whole drag racing back burner right now because the track's gone. Okay, yeah, so John said he used the stepper motor to pump the gas and remote start on the carburetor car. There you go. You can use it. I mean, that's, you know, sometimes you got to think outside the box. And I, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people think way outside the box. I mean, we were pretty sure that there was a couple guys that had front tire counters on their cars and stuff like that. And there's a red Camaro that I'm working on that eventually will hit the drag strip with a Holly Dominator, and I've got a bunch of things that aren't illegal, but there's a lot of things I'm going to put in that car to help situate the car to you know, make it a winner. So in Super Gas and Super Street Super Comp, the rule of thumb there is you want the car to go 30-40 mile an hour faster than the ET that you're running. It's an index class. Super Street is a 1090, Super Gas is 990, Super Comp is 890. But typically those cars, a typical Super Gas car can run in the 8-second zone, no problem. So they'll go a 990 car on muscle, straight out, legit, should be running between 138 and 142. That's what kind of horsepower it takes to make a 2,800 pound, 2,500 pound car run that speed. But if you go to Gator Nationals and watch this weekend and watch the Super Gas guys, you'll see them all going 991, 992 at 165. And what their theory is, they want to run the car, they want to run their opponent down so that they have the advantage, because they're watching the guy that they're racing the entire time. And the other side of that is the slow guy now is looking over his shoulder going, where is this guy? Where is this guy? And by the time he figures the speed differential between the two cars, he has no way to slow the car down and try to play the stripe. He has to either guess, I'm either going to just park it and let him take the stripe, or I'm going to take the stripe and trust my dial in. So there's a bunch of theories going on when in those classes. So one of the things I want to do with this red Camaro is we're going to run nitrous on the car, and we're going to make it in the middle of the track. We're going to spray it, not enough to make it spin the tires, but we're going to spray it to gain 20 mile an hour. But then at the 1,000 foot, shut the nitrous off and have the car slow down all of a sudden, rapid deceleration, just so that your opponent can't judge where you are. That's the whole key to bracket racing, is racing the stripe. If both cars cut a consistent light, it's who's going to be closer to the number and taking the stripe or giving up the stripe if you think you're behind. And it's all a big mind game. So obviously anytime you can throw that person off, because he'll see that car back there and see it starting to come after him. So he's like, all right, this guy's going to come in with a heavy speed differential. So I'm going to get ready. I'm going to put my plan in motion for that. And then at the 1,000 foot mark, all of a sudden the car stops, and kind of works. It kind of drives them crazy. Yes, John, just like a scramble button on a turbo car. It's that, have it if I need it. A lot of your big money bracket race guys, what they do is they hold three numbers. They say, so the car is going to run 990. They tune the throttle stop or whatever they're controlling the car to run like a 988 or actually a 978, something like that. And then they'll use the foot brake to take the stripe. They'll ease into, the stripe. And of course, I don't bracket race anymore, so it's nothing. But the other side of that whole thing is when you're chasing somebody down, we would always run to the center of the track. We want to get as close to the center line as we can because we want to judge where our fender is compared to their fender, so who's going to take the stripe. And vice versa. If you're the slow car, you don't want that fast car getting that good eye on where your front end is, so we would go all the way out to the wall, get away from it, as far as we could get away from. So those are little tricks that we've always played with. They're not nothing that's not known. Some people know about them, some don't. But those are all the little things you can do for racing. So I digress. But anyway, so I really appreciate everybody being on tonight. Hopefully, you guys got something out of the tech talk. I think next week I'll go ahead because I should have all the braided done on the Regal. So I'll show you some tricks I do with making braided hoses and stuff like that. And thank you for tuning in. So just for you guys that came in late, tonight was our 35th live episode. So we're over that halfway point to a full year of Tuesday Night Lives. But this also marked the 200th video on my channel. So I didn't realize I had that many videos on the channel, but of course 35 of them are from the live show. So Bill says he's going to Gators on Thursday. Very cool. And a bunch of guys are Eugene and a bunch of guys are going to have their cars in that top end car show thing they have up there now. I didn't know about that. Yeah, John, check out the replay, and I did put in the description the links to the tools that I showed. Ryan, appreciate it, man. And Andrew's on tonight. How you doing, Andrew? We're anxious to hear updates on the 4200 Dude. Yes, we did. I'll give you a little insight. We talked about it last week. We haven't had much time to get to the racetrack. We put a new turbo on. And we went to the racetrack last Sunday, not this last Sunday, Sunday before, and I think it was last Sunday. Anyway, because it was before a week before the World Series Outlaw Pro Mod. So Sunday run day, tracks usually hot 10 to 3:30. They close the staging and it runs till about 4:30. Because they had the World Series of Pro Mod there, which was going to be a big pay-per-view and everything else, they cut us way short and shut it down at 3 o'clock. No, it didn't matter if you were in the staging lanes or not. 3 o'clock, it was done. And they had a jet car doing licensing, so every time they made a run, there was a lot of cleanup. So, being we had a new turbo, we backed everything way down, and we just didn't get enough time to turn everything back up to where it was. I was afraid because we don't know when the turbo was damaged, and we felt that it was been damaged for a long time. So I was afraid to overboost the engine, and I have the tuning set for that and stuff. So it took a little bit of time. So we never got a good clean run out of it. And then on the last run, we had a fuel pump issue, so we didn't even get to make the run, which that one should have been the first full quarter-mile run of the weekend, and I had the fuel tables where I thought we were pretty happy with. So it was a big letdown, a lot of effort, not a lot of return, but we're going to try to go. The next outing is going to be March. I can't make March 10th because we got these two grudge cars I got to finish up for that event, so it'll be next month. So thanks a lot, man. John says, did you happen to see the Le Mans wagon at Sick Week? I'm sure Bill did. I didn't catch much of Sick Week. My TV in the shop is on the fritz as far as getting on the internet, so I didn't get to watch the live feed on it. I may have seen some pictures of it on Facebook, but I didn't get to see anything. Andrew, I appreciate you watching for the updates. I have to get caught up on your 5th gen Camaro setup. I started watching one the other day and got interrupted, and I hadn't got back to it, but I'll check those out. So I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We ran over a little bit tonight, but I appreciate everything. Everybody have a good week, and I will see everybody next Tuesday Night Live.